Welcome to the Here We Go podcast. I am your host, Trent Ging. Today we're going to be talking about the state of panic among Steeler Nation as the preseason has not gone well for the first couple of games. It seems that everybody's kind of on edge right now with so many things that we're worried about. How much of this is justified? How much of this is getting blown out of proportion? So I'm going to say something that I've said before. And I say this every year. The results of preseason mean absolutely nothing. What you're looking to do is evaluate players, not the team. Now, of course, as fans, we want to see the team execute much better than what we've seen. The execution has been absolutely horrible. One of the worst spots of our team right now has been the offensive line. The offensive line is a group that just, quite honestly, looks atrocious. But I'll say this, for anybody who didn't expect this to be an early struggle, just doesn't understand what it's like for a rookie coming into the NFL. Game 1, Troy Falatanu starting very early out in that game, coming in with some of the first-team guys. You could tell they were trying to work him in there. He came in immediately after Broderick Jones left the game. He has a little bit of troubles. Then, of course, he gets hurt. I'm not sure how much of his struggles was because of the injury versus maybe, just rookie struggles. But, it appears from all the reporting that he actually was hurt much earlier than when he came out of the game. So you could probably attribute some of his struggles to the fact that he had hurt his knee. He's not going to be playing in this preseason game. Broderick Jones has been struggling. Now, of course, he's got a little injury controversy on his own rights. So he has that injured arm where he's been wearing this brace. He's talked a number of times about how that brace limits his mobility. People are talking about he doesn't have any punch. He seems to be backpedaling way too quickly into his pass sets. But there's just a number of things going wrong there, and he's getting beat to the inside quite frequently. Well, here's a little glimmer of hope. The guy's still not playing his natural position, which is left tackle. Now, why that is, I don't know. Will he play left tackle in this third preseason game? I certainly hope so. But it wouldn't surprise me if he doesn't. Dylan Cook was in a walking boot. I don't believe he's going to play in this preseason game. Falatanu already ruled out for this preseason game. I mean, who are you starting? Spencer Anderson? I would not move Spencer Anderson away from guard. I know he did a little bit in that second preseason game, but to be perfectly honest with you, that guy's looked really, really good at guard, and I would leave him there. That is now his natural home, if you ask me. I understand his versatility brings value, especially if we want to keep 9 guys instead of 10 guys on that offensive line. Or even if you really wanted to get desperate and keep 8 guys. I don't know. There's a lot of roster moves that are going to be made, and I'll be going through a 53-man prediction here before too long. He brings versatility, so of course they're going to like that. I think he's just locked himself into being on this 53-man roster either way. But I think I would continue to give that guy reps at guard more so than tackle. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see Broderick Jones trotting back out there with the first team offense at right tackle. We have yet to see our starting 5 take a single snap together, period, in this preseason. Zach Frazier looks every bit the part. I know James Daniels and Isaac Seumalo struggled in that last preseason game. Guys, couple things. We're running a very, 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 very basic offense. I've seen reports that we called 4 total plays in that game. Buffalo had seen all this stuff a number of times. They knew it was coming. And they just beat us. And that's okay. You want to see your guys execute a little better than what we did. But for anybody saying Isaac Seumalo is going to be a problem this year, I mean, seriously, the dude is one of the better guards in the NFL. James Daniels, he's now going to be a problem. We need to trade him now that he's on the last year of his contract. Calm down. The dude has been rock solid for 3 years. You think all of a sudden in 2 preseason games the guy fell apart? Not a chance. It takes time for an offensive line to gel in the NFL. I wish our timetable was moved up. If you've listened to Colin and I talk, we've been preaching this since the day one start of camp. That's not how the organization or the coaching staff have gone. In my opinion, it's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Here we are. The other thing I want people to take a little bit into consideration here. We're not running the ball very frequently with our first team offense. We're going to be a running football team. We're not going to come out slinging it all over the field like what they're coming out in preseason. They're not going to be a pass-first offense. So you're not even seeing what this team's going to look like. I think Arthur Smith understands that not only is Atlanta going to be a revenge game for him of sorts, but Atlanta's going to be a damn good team this year. They've put a lot of really good pieces together. They locked up A.J. Terrell with an extension. They bring in Jesse Bates. They bring in Justin Simmons. They bring in Matthew Judon. This team is making moves to get better, and that's not even to talk about on offense where they brought in Kirk Cousins, who has been one of the most solid, consistent performing quarterbacks in the NFL for the better part of a decade. This is not going to be the team that loses a ton of games like they did last year. If they're healthy, they've got a very nice young core on offense, especially at the skill position. They do have a couple of offensive line issues. Hopefully, a guy like T.J. Watt's going to take advantage of a weak right tackle, which could make this game really interesting. But make no mistake about it, this is not going to be a cupcake game where we just walk all over them and assert our dominance. They are going to go blow for blow with us, and we're really going to get a nice, strong test early to see what we have in this roster. But let's not say because of what we've seen so far in preseason, this team now, when they came out with the odds maker saying we were at 8.5, everybody was in an uproar. Oh, we made the playoffs last year. We've got to win at least 10 games this year. Our roster got better, blah, blah, blah. Now we're like, oh, man, we may not win 5 games. Guys, it's preseason. Who cares? Kenny Pickett lit the world on fire last year. He looked like he was going to win the MVP and the Super Bowl. And guess what? That didn't happen. So let's not get too excited at what we've seen because of preseason. Now, if we're evaluating individual players, I mean, there's some guys who are going to be in the starting lineup that I have concerns about. How hurt is Broderick Jones? Because he's played terribly. He's admitted as much. Tomlin has said as much. He's not had a good preseason. That's a guy that we want to be our future at left tackle, and he's struggling right now. That is something to be concerned about. I wouldn't necessarily be throwing the season away and saying, no, God, here we go. Dan Moore is going to start all year again. I don't think that's the case. I think Broderick's going to be fine. Because you can't tell me this guy regressed this much from last season to this year. I just don't believe that. But there is a reason for it, and the team needs to identify that reason and resolve it. We've only got a couple of weeks left to do that. But that is time to work on fundamentals and help a guy get back to his game. It's definitely a doable thing. So don't get too excited about this. A guy that I don't think anybody's really talking about yet, I think Deshaun Elliott's struggled so far in preseason, especially in coverage. I talked in the live podcast with Colin about how I actually charted him for 2 missed tackles and 2 really bad coverage plays where he got beat pretty easily. Those are things that cannot happen. Not for a guy brought in to play the role he's brought into play in this defense, because we're going to be moving him around an awful lot. Early downs, he's going to be that box safety who's going to be there to tackle. And then they're going to probably play him down inside the box again as a 3-down safety, or 3-safety look, I should say. Because I think Pittsburgh's going to want to run that quite frequently, especially if their confidence wavers at all in Beanie Bishop. And that's another position that I think a lot of fans need to be concerned about. Beanie played a pretty nice game in the first preseason. He had a really, really rough week of practice, especially when we got into joint practices with the Bills. And then he misses the game against Buffalo. Coach's decision. Beanie's definitely a lock to make the 53-man roster, in my opinion. But I'm just not so certain how comfortable the team is to have this guy starting and playing a high number of reps. They may move to that 3-safety look quite frequently because I know they're comfortable with KZ. They went out and signed Elliott for a reason. That guy's going to be on the field a lot. But the question becomes, who ends up being the starter? Does Beanie Bishop finish this thing off and hold down that starting slot corner spot? Or does a guy like Thomas Graham make a push, who's also had a nice camp, and continues to work his way up the depth chart? Those are areas I would definitely be concerned about. The other position that may or may not be necessary to worry about, but I would focus on it in this game at least, is who's going to win out in this backup running back position. Because if Jaylen Warren misses the first preseason game, or the first regular season game against Atlanta, then you are going to need someone else to step up. Now, personally, I think the Steelers should sit Najee Harris in this third game. I would not play that dude. If Jalen's hurt and there's any risk of him not playing week 1, I am not playing Najee Harris in this game. I'm sitting him down, tell him to show up in a ball cap, some shorts and a T-shirt, and enjoy the show because, dude, we need you week 1. I don't need you in this final preseason game. I'd give work to a guy like Cordero Patterson, especially with the first-string guys. And from there, I would let this running back room just kind of go in there and see what they're capable of. Give another look to a guy like Jonathan Ward if he's healthy enough to play. I know he's coming back from his hamstring. LaMichael Pirine, give him more work. He's looked pretty good at times. Aaron Shamplin, see what he can do. And I would really give a hard look to a guy like Dejon Edwards. He's an undrafted rookie, but he's ran hard. But can he run hard and be effective against first-string guys? I'd let those guys get some work in with our first-team offense. And see if you have a diamond in the rough there that, if need be, you can stash on the practice squad and then call them up. I think it's something to keep an eye on. Another thing just to keep an eye on, but not necessarily a concern because the whole room's a concern. Does Scotty Miller work his way into the wide receiver 3? Now, I'll say this, Colin has been banging on his drum before everybody else. And he clearly is onto something with this because Scotty Miller just keeps coming and coming and coming and working his way up this depth chart. And I think I'd give him some punt return opportunity. And I'd let him play with the starters. I mean, the guy has just done nothing but produce in any situation he's put in. I don't care if it's the starters he's playing against, backups, third string guys, guys who aren't going to be in the league. If you're producing, keep moving him up the ladder and see if he keeps producing. Now, the last position that I think is starting to really get interesting to me that I didn't think was going to be interesting is an inside linebacker. No, we're not talking about the starters. PQ and Elandon Roberts are locks. Peyton Wilson has shown that guy is the next best linebacker on this team. Even if Cole Holcomb comes back and he's 100% healthy, I don't want to see him on the field. Peyton Wilson he's the real deal. The thing that I'm talking about, there's going to be a battle between Tyler Matakevich, who seemed like he was going to be a lock because of his special teams ability, and Mark Robinson. Mark Robinson has been playing fantastic, especially in special teams. I've pointed out a number of times that guy has been one of the first guys downfield to make tackles on the punt coverage team. He's played very well in the kickoff game. He's played very, very well on defense. He actually played some good coverage. That's his biggest knock. Mark Robinson just keeps hanging around. He's a guy who just wants to make the team. He's doing whatever he has to do to make the team. And I think he's intriguing right now. I mean, he has been everywhere. I'll be honest. If Cole Holcomb wasn't such a big cap hit, I'd move on. This linebacker room looks better than what I thought was going to look behind these guys. I expected Peyton Wilson to play pretty well. I wasn't going all in on the defensive player of the year stuff because I don't think the guy's going to be on the field that much, to be quite frank. Or defensive rookie player of the year, I should say. But I didn't expect much to be behind him. I didn't expect. I thought Cole Holcomb was a lock to be on this team simply because if injury strikes, he's going to be a very high-end backup player. And I thought he would actually be ahead of Peyton Wilson, to be quite honest with you. But I don't think that's the case anymore. The way Peyton Wilson plays, as a rookie struggling in coverage with room to grow, he's better at coverage right now, in my opinion, than what Cole Holcomb was last year, who we brought here for his coverage ability. He struggled pretty heavily in coverage. Now, not everybody can play middle linebacker in Pittsburgh. We ask a lot of that group. Maybe Cole Holcomb just couldn't figure out the concepts well enough to stay in coverage and show that he was that type of player he was in Washington. Peyton Wilson, I think, is the guy who's as advertised. And I'm real interested to see what happens with Holcomb. I think they're going to start him out on IR and reevaluate his situation once it gets closer for him to make a return. But this battle between Mark Robinson and Tyler Matakevich is going to be really, really interesting. I know Matakevich had a minor injury. It didn't look like anything serious. So I expect both those guys to play, and they might be fighting for a final roster spot right now, to be honest with you. So there's a lot of really interesting things to keep an eye on. I know we're not going to see Roman Wilson in this game. There's a lot of talk about the Roman Wilson stuff with him starting out on IR. Like, I'm not going to go as far as to say nothing's impossible, because we've seen in the Steelers organization, the impossible finds its way to be possible. The things that you think are just stupid moves that we should never make, somehow we tend to make at times. I don't see a way where you can possibly start this guy on IR just because he hasn't had a chance to really grow into the offense yet. I don't care. He's one of the better receivers on the team. He's going to be dressed and he's going to be playing. That's my philosophy on it. That's how my outlook is on it. But there's going to be a lot of interesting things to watch for in this final preseason game. Of course, Colin and I will be getting on prior to the game start. We're going to do another live. We're going to break things down a little bit more in a granular level, and just see where we really evaluate this team after the game. We'll be doing a post game probably the following day. So that's all I have for today. Just some interesting things. I'm just trying to caution people into getting too overly excited about the good or the bad in this preseason. Of course, the Justin Fields, Russell Wilson thing's still going to go on as a competition. I personally don't think it's much of a competition. Russell Wilson's going to be the starting quarterback week 1. But if that's something you want to keep an eye on, by all means, keep an eye on it. Thanks for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, have a wonderful day.